Who's ready to make one of these? Super cute, quick little scrap busting project today that has fully lined, has 3 card slots with a little flap closure so it's secure and doesn't fall out. And the bonus with this is I've even included free SVG files that will cut everything out for you and make it that much quicker. But for today's instructional purposes, I'll assume you don't have the cutter and we'll just jump in and go as if you have to cut everything out by hand. But let's go make this. I am super excited to share with you today's project because it is the perfect scrap busting project. As you'll see in the materials list, it does not call for much fabric at all. This is a piece of leather and then a piece of fabric, and it's no interfacing is required at all. The other things that will be essential that you'll need to have on hand is a 4-inch zipper. I'm using zipper by the yard, so we did cut it to 5 inches. You will also need a piece of ribbon. This is 2.5 inches wide, or you can use a very thin cotton material as well. It will still work to make your card slots. And then for the closure snap, I'm using some spring snaps. As far as optional steps, the pattern does talk about possibly painting the edges, but because it is a self-healing textile that we will be using, the edge painting is strictly personal preference. So let's just jump right in and get started. So you'll notice in the pattern, I do give a pattern piece for the strap connector, but because we're gonna leave all the edges raw, the best method I have found is to cut them bigger. And so this is 1 inch wide by 4 inches tall, and we're gonna glue these wrong sides together and then cut it down to the appropriate size. But if you cut out 2 pattern pieces and then try and glue them together, you don't find that you'll get the cleanest edges. Sometimes we're just not as careful. So that's what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna add some glue to both sides of the wrong side of our leather. I use just an old credit card to kind of spread it out to the edges. Doesn't need a crazy amount of glue, but we do want them adhered together pretty well, but we'll end up sewing them as one, so at least we'll have that. But so now you have 2 essential right sides, and we'll put that under a heavy book, give it a chance to dry, and we'll go to the next step. I've given my strap a chance to dry, and so I'm going to go ahead and cut it down to size. By cutting the 2 pieces as one, you get a nice, perfect clean edge. And just going with how the rest of the pattern already looks, I'm gonna go ahead and just take off a smidge of the corner. That's entirely up to you. And then I'm going to take this to the machine and go ahead and sew 1/8 inch from the edge and then install the female portion of our spring snap. Voila. So I've just added the female portion of the spring snap. If you are edge coating your project, you want to get that going right now because you will need 1 to 3 layers of an edge coat depending on the look you're going for. So paint this, set it aside, and give it a chance to dry. I like to stick it on some Wonder Clips so it stays off my work surface and can just dry that way. So let's move on to the other part of the wallet. So before we cut out our actual fabric pieces, I want you to cut out the perimeter of the pattern as well as the zipper box rectangle on the center of your exterior piece, as well as the cut lines on the liner piece. Then we're gonna put these on top of our faux leather or leather, and then our cotton liner, and trace them onto there and cut that out and the perimeter. I'm doing the tracing on the wrong side of the leather to start, and then once these things are cut out, then I will flip this over to cut my card slots because I want them on the correct side versus doing it all from the back side. We'll do that right now. Now that my pieces are cut out, I'm going to take this liner piece and flip it to the wrong side and iron these raw edges in and open so that when we flip it to the right side, we'll see no raw edges on the lining piece. As for the exterior, we're going to flip it from the wrong side to the right side and go ahead and clip our pattern piece in place to use as our cut lines and guide. And then we'll go ahead and cut these lines and these holes and our lock placement. All right, so for the next step, we're still on the wrong side of our card slot or exterior panel. You're gonna want some double-sided tape for this. I usually cut 7 strips about 2 inches long and have them ready to go. 2 of which you won't be using right this second. You'll use them as you're sewing your card slots, but I just have them cut ready to go. So you're gonna take these and put them directly below each cut line. So I'm starting below each cut line. And then you're gonna measure up a 1/2 inch from the very bottom. Put a piece of tape there. And then you're also gonna measure a 1/2 inch above the top line. And put a piece of tape there. So then we're gonna go ahead and install our actual card slots using the ribbon method. We'll take that to our machine and do that now. All right, so it's important to note that I did already cut the snap placement hole before we do our card slots. And then I have a lighter handy and my snips because we're not gonna backstitch at the start and stop of each line. We're gonna end up just sewing and we'll pull the threads to the back, tie them off and singe them. If you're not using a binded nylon like I am, you could just use a dab of fray check to prevent the knot from unraveling. So to start, I'm gonna take the very bottom row card slot tape off and take my strip of ribbon. It's gonna be going upwards and I'm gonna press that into that first layer of tape. Then I'm gonna flip it over and sew this first row without back stitching. So it is easiest if you pull the threads to the back and knot them off after each row of stitching. But now that I've shown you one, I'm just gonna keep moving along and I will tie them all off at the end so we can make better use of our time. All right, so then I peel off this bottom row of tape. I give this part a good finger press, lay it completely straight as you can, and press well into that tape. And we'll take off this next row and fold it back up. Again, a good finger press, lay it nice and smooth into this piece of tape. Then we're going to repeat this process with our machine. We would tie those off. Again, I'm just gonna jump right in and keep moving along. So now we're gonna measure up a 1/2 inch like we did with the very bottom and place a piece of the tape. And peel that off, fold this back down, press that really well with your fingers, push it into the tape, and peel off the final slot there and pull it up. Flip it right side up. Okay, we do have to complete this third card slot, so we do need to measure up again a 1/2 inch one last time. Pull that down. A bit of a wrinkle. Okay. And last one. Pull it up into the tape. So you have a little bit of excess up here that we will just cut off with a pair of scissors, pull our threads to the back, tie off, and that will be done. Just finished the card slot, so we'll go ahead and trim off this extra bit. Okay, and then I like to take a pressing cloth from the wrong side because you can kind of see they're billowing out, and I really do like them as flat as possible. So I will just give it a quick hit with my iron to flatten those out a little bit. And then now, in order to lay it and flat and smooth it out as we go, it's important not to do our snap beforehand or we'd have all these bumps. So now we gotta kind of look through that gap there, and we're gonna install our male portion of the spring snap. So I have to slide it in through the hole and set it with my setting tool. So before I move along to the next steps, I do want to verify that my cards are done right before I'm all done with my wallet check and it's like I did it wrong. That's the worst. So looks good. So we'll move on to, well, I'll set this with my setter and we'll move on to installing the zipper. Next, we're going to go ahead and install our zipper. So you'll find that this part is really helpful if you have your double-sided tape. So I've put some along each of the edges and just outside the box. I'll go ahead and peel the tape, the backings off. And then I'm going to center it directly over my zipper. And now's the time to kind of finagle it to get it centered before you actually do any sewing. If you happen to have a label that you want to add to this exterior or the liner, you want to add that now, because then we are going to add the lining. We're going to spray it with spray adhesive, this entire backside, so that we can position it and get it to stay in place. But you want to add your label before you do any of that and before you sew your zipper. Again, I'm not going to backstitch. I am going to pull them to the back and tie off. Move right along. How many of you jumped with that one? Okay. pull my thread to the back when I come upon it. Drop your needle in that first stitch, and I usually just go one over it. There we go. We'll tie these off and singe them. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and grab the snap, closure snap that we've completed in the beginning step, and we're gonna snap it in place. And then I like to flip the whole thing over, and I'm gonna tuck it in between the layer we just sprayed in here. Just peel it back a little bit, let it fold over, and then I'll tuck it back down in. And I like to clip that fold to kind of create a little bit of memory for that fold. And I'll clip that back down in place. So let's just double check that it's perfectly upright. And then that's how that will look. Just like that. So then once I got it how I like it, then I'll go ahead and unsnap this. And just clip it upright now. And then we're gonna go ahead and fold the whole wallet perfectly in half, lining up each of the edges and clip in place. So use your finger to get a nice crease here. Same thing with this side. Okay, so when I take it to my machine to sew, I do like the zipper a little bit open so that it can lay flatter right here. And then I'm just gonna sew 1/8 of an inch all around this perimeter. And then when I'm all done, I'll take that opportunity to kind of just clean up all the edges with a straight edge ruler. And I'll show you how I do that when we get there. So I've opened the zipper a bit so it lays nice and flat, and I'm gonna be sewing 1/8 of an inch from the edge. All right, so then I just tie these off per usual, and then we're gonna trim up the edges and we're gonna be done. All right, so, I mean, as you can see, it's not awful, but there's just some edges that are not quite even. So this is where I like to take a straight edge ruler and really just clean it up on the sides. Holding the ruler really tight and a lot of pressure so that you can get a nice clean cut. So I focus on the sides that don't have the strap that I can cut. And I'll be honest, when I went to clip everything in place, I made a special effort to line these up so that I wouldn't really have to trim it, because I can't obviously cut with a strap. So here we go, our wallet is done. Super cute. All right, so if you want to have this as a grab and go type of thing, you can either clip a wristlet strap to your zipper pull, or if you've purchased some of these side anchors because you've made our slim sling, it looks fantastic on this wallet. All you have to do is punch a couple of holes, screw this in, and it's a low profile, kind of doesn't take up a whole lot of space. You don't have a big old D-ring Shrek ears, what I call them. And then all you do is add a wristlet strap to that, and it's a grab and go wallet.